Hello and welcome back to Wisdom in Action, the podcast where we explore what it takes to bridge the gap between knowing and doing, because that's where the real wisdom is born. I'm Austra, resilience coach and podcast strategist, and I created the space to have honest conversations with real experts and bring you practical insights you can apply, not just think about. Today, we are joined by Britt Chemla Jones, an expert in body, mind, spirit connection, Reiki energy healer, and yoga and meditation teacher. With over 30 years of experience, Britt helps her clients release emotional blocks, elevate their self-confidence, and reconnect with inner peace by balancing their chakras and cultivating spiritual resilience. Britt, welcome to Wisdom in Action.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
It's good to have you on. I'm really curious about the conversation we're going to get on. So, to start off, what is one piece of wisdom that changed everything once you started to apply it?
I realized that everything is connected, that the body, the mind, and the spirit are completely intertwined. And so everything that affects one will affect the other two. And it just all happens cohesively all together at the same time. Realizing that when we separate the body, the mind, the spirit, we are leaving a lot of healing we're preventing a lot of healing from happening. And so just really acknowledging and understanding and experiencing how connected they are.
How did you get to this realization? Because it's quite profound.
Yeah. So really it goes back to when my parents passed away. So about 15 years ago, both my parents passed away within just a few months of each other. And at the time, I was a young mom. I had two little boys. And so I knew that I could not allow the grief to destroy me because I had to be there for my kids and my husband. I also knew that I could not repress the grief, pretend it wasn't there, because then it would come out in really destructive ways. So I made the conscious decision that I would survive the grief by just going through it. And I used the tools that were at my disposal. So at the time, I had already been doing yoga for about 10, 15 years and a little bit of meditation. But I did those things in a very casual way. I went to yoga once a week, just hang out with my friends doing a little yoga. I did a little 5-minute meditation at the end of yoga class, really didn't take it very seriously. But I had heard that yoga helps to release stuck emotions. So emotions can get trapped in your physical body. And through yoga, you're able to let them go and heal from those emotions. And I had also heard, as we all have, that meditation can help to calm your mind so that you feel inner peace. I had not experienced those things yet, but I decided to dedicate myself to my yoga practice and my meditation practice, really do a deep dive and connect with those two healing modalities in a really profound way. And once I did that, because I wanted to heal from the grief, everything changed.
What was the process, and what were some of the things that you experienced, or what were some of the ways how in your experience the yoga and meditation helped you through the grief?
Yeah. So I started going to yoga class a lot more often, not just that once a week. I started doing workshop. I started practicing at home. I got a yoga mat for the home and just actually started practicing. I would sit on my yoga mat and connect with how am I feeling today? What are my emotions today? And then I would notice if I could feel those emotions within my physical body. And then I would experiment with different stretches, different movements, different shapes or poses to try and release those emotions so they would flow out of my body. So I did that in a very conscientious way, very purposeful way. And then for meditation, I had learned how to do a lying down meditation like we do at the end of yoga class, Shavasana. But I decided to teach myself sitting meditation. So we had this nice big walk-in closet. And so I would go sit in the closet, close the door, because I knew I could get away from my two babies at the time like that. So I could just be behind that closed door. And I would just sit on the floor in my closet, just trying to meditate. And at first, really, I would just be crying and crying, tears streaming down my face. But eventually I started getting to that point where I would have these little split seconds of peace and calm. And it was just a tiny little moment in time, and then the grief would come right back. But as I started to notice that moment of calm and quiet within my being, I started being able to expand that moment so that now it was 1 second or 2 seconds. And slowly, I started to be able to calm myself and find that inner peace.
With that expanding from 1 to 2 seconds, to longer and longer, I assume it wasn't like within a week now you're like completely at peace, there's no grief. How, what would be your advice to navigate? And I don't think it's just with the grief itself. It's, I think any kind of change or anything we work through, any kind of patterns, is that a lot of times we want to be at the finish line already, but it is a process. It takes a lot of experience, a lot of practice, a lot of time is in this equation as well. How to navigate going through it, especially as you go through it, using grief as an example. It's not like you want to feel it. It's not like you want to be it, but you still need to go through it. And it's 1 second a day that you're like, I feel good. And then you go back to it. How to navigate that time as you're going through it.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that that is the human experience. We all go through it at different times of our lives in different ways. And that's just what the practice is. You know, it's called a meditation practice because we're just practicing it. It's very difficult, I would say even impossible, to be in that meditative state all the time. And yeah, it's just about expanding that moment. I think it's really important when we learn to meditate to learn to not judge ourselves for failing, because we will fail. That's just part of the practice. And so when I teach meditation now to my clients, I always remind them that their mind will get distracted. They will go back to thinking about things they don't want to think about. But it's very important to not get angry or frustrated or start judging themselves, because when we do that, that becomes another thought. That becomes another negative emotion. And so we're actually moving away from the state of peace. So instead of judging and keeping the distraction going, we release the judgment instantly. The moment we realize we've gotten distracted, we release it instantly with no judgment, so that we're not adding another thought or another emotion, and we go back to the practice. And it's not easy. It's very difficult. But that is how we eventually achieve, a few minutes of peace. Yeah.
Judging yourself, that's a big one. I have this thing that I realized that there's two ways how I could approach things. One is judgment, the other one is curiosity. And initially when I think we all notice some patterns or some things we don't like about ourselves, about our lives, the instant reaction would be judgment. Go and judge it, or like judge myself and be hard on myself, things like that. But then I started to shift more towards curiosity. I wonder, why am I like this? Why am I thinking like this? And I think that helped to open so many doors to at least exploring and trying to understand. And in that understanding, a lot of times there's some things that show up that can be done. But it is, like, I think like most of the things that we talk about, it's easier said than done. And is especially shifting from the judgment or being harsh on ourselves towards more compassion and being kind. Do you have any advice there, or what could be the first steps to take if somebody listening might realize that I'm actually quite hard on myself? I'm in many of those things, even that you mentioned. What would be some of the steps to take?
Yeah. There's a famous quote, and I might mess it up, but something like, it's from Louise Hay. And she said something like, you've been beating yourself up for most of your life and it hasn't worked. Why don't you try a little compassion instead? And so I think it's, like you said, curiosity, noticing that when we judge ourselves, when we are hard on ourselves, that it doesn't accomplish anything good, that nothing positive comes out of that. Meanwhile, when we are compassionate, when we treat ourselves with kindness, there's actually these really nice energetic shifts that happen at that moment. And we actually can see that there's positive that can come from that. And so I think experimenting, try being really mean to yourself for one whole day and then try being really nice to yourself for another full day and see how you feel and see how you interact with the world and see what opportunities come up or don't come up, see how your relationships go. Yeah, I love the idea of curiosity. Curiosity is actually one of the elements of the crown chakra. When somebody is curious, that means their crown chakra is really open and strongly connected to source. And judgmental attitude is a closed crown chakra. So it makes perfect sense that the two would be two sides of a coin. As for self-love and self-compassion, that's the heart chakra. And it's impossible, and you've seen this with family members and with your friends, it's impossible to love others and have compassion for others if we don't have love and compassion for ourselves first. So that's where it begins.
It's very interesting how a lot of times we look for answers outside or externally, but a lot of them are within us. And I even was thinking about it. Last year I did the 90-day, pretty much like I prepared for half Ironman in 90 days. And I had no background in triathlons. For the most part, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just training a lot. But they were through all those workouts, because a lot of it is, to what you said, is we have a lot of emotions that we're storing within our bodies. And a lot of times when you exercise, they can start to come out. Or even for me, I wouldn't really, when I would go on long bike rides, or I would go for swims or runs, I wouldn't listen to anything. I would just be with myself, especially on bike. It would be like sometimes up to 7 hours. You're just by yourself within your mind. And that's where I was kind of like jokingly thinking about it as my self-development work, where I can like go within, I can do some work while I'm doing the cycling. And there's one thing that I realized is that a lot of us, because I had so much space with myself, not by myself, with myself, big difference. And I actually got this realization in sauna, where there's like no phones, no nothing. You're just sitting by yourself. I got this realization that so many of us, especially at this day and age, we're so distracted from ourselves, and we look for answers, whether it's online or somewhere externally, that we don't even consider looking within or going within, or even next level to that is we're afraid of that. We're actually afraid to, in some ways, get to really know ourselves. Is that, well, one question I would have, is that something that you maybe have noticed when it comes to even like self-exploration, things like that, that a lot of times we look for something external and we think that the solution is there? And what did you say to somebody who is looking for answers outside of themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we realize that the answers are within and we're going to have to look to ourselves, that takes a lot of courage, and it takes really being very brave. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not easy, and it's something that requires bravery. I think when we look for answers from someone else, and we all do this, it's just part of the human condition. So, but when we do that, we want somebody else to be responsible, so that if we fail, if it doesn't work out, we can say, well, it's not my fault, it's them. They gave me the bad advice. When we don't look to someone else and we try to find the answers within ourselves, if we fail, which really there is no such thing as failing, but if we don't get the results we wanted, then we don't have anybody else to blame. And that's where the courage and the bravery comes in, because we need to be okay with whatever we figure out and however we move forward on our path. But do remember, there's really no failing. You're just moving along on your spiritual path. You'll get to where you want to get in however long it'll take you. That was part of it with, dealing with the grief, is that I didn't want it to take too long. I wanted to go through it, experience it, get past it. But yeah, it took courage. Yeah.
How was that? Well, one question I had was about self-trust and intuition, because I think with what you said is that a lot of times we might, especially I think starting with the intuition, is that we might actually have an inclination of what we think or believe is the right thing for us or the right decision, but then a lot of times we can end up not trusting it, or not trusting ourselves about making that right decision. Do you have any guidance or advice there?
Yeah. I had a teacher who described intuition as being, you walk into a dark room and you light a match, and intuition gives you a little bit of information, but then the match burns out and you're back in the black room, in the dark room. And so the intuition is very valuable and helpful because it gives you some information, but it doesn't give you the whole image, and it doesn't give you all the details. So
It's not super clear.
It's not super clear. And so it's like a flash. And so you will have to experiment. You will have to tune into your curiosity and try things out, and things might not work. And then you go back to your intuition and, like, lighting the match again, let me get another lay of the land. But yeah, it's important not to get that little flash of intuition and just stay with it no matter what, because you're going to keep getting feedback. And the feedback might be that that first step was right, but now you need to do something different, right? So you need to be constantly adjusting and balancing and just finding your path again. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think it's actually, you touched on an important point about, I think a lot of us, we have this like black and white thinking, or it's kind of like, okay, I made this decision that this is what I'm gonna do, so now I have to stick to it. That's what I made a decision. Or if I don't, it will mean this and that about me, or I will be a failure, or whatever might be the case. One question would be, have you experienced it yourself? And what do you think could be something that can help to navigate that black and white that is so easy to get into?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple things there. On one hand, when we practice meditation and mindfulness, we learn to be in the present moment. And so we make the decisions for what is going on in the present, and things might shift and change. And so we adjust, we course correct as needed as we move forward. On the other hand, there are times in our lives when we have to commit and make that commitment and stay with it. That might be with relationships with people. It might be with, jobs that are difficult, but we decide to stick with them because we believe that the reward will be worthwhile. Certainly when you become a mom, you're committed to your kids no matter what. So it's finding that balance between being in the present, course correcting as needed, as you get these intuitive hits, as you get this guidance from spirit, and at the same time acknowledging that there are moments of commitment that are important to there are moments when we commit to something important. It's like we're grounding our energy into earth energy, and so we become really present, and we really embody the experience of being a human being on this planet. So it really depends on the situation, if you need to constantly course correct or if you need to commit and stick with it. And that just depends.
Yeah, it's something that I find interesting a lot of times when I work with clients. I'm like, well, welcome to being human.
Yeah.
Like a lot of this, I think we have this, in some ways, we have this expectation that which I also wanted to touch on about emotions, because I think a lot of times for us to think that we're in alignment or we're on the right path, we think that we have to feel certain way or we have to feel good. But at the same time, it's especially when it comes to being on the path of growth, it doesn't feel good. It's not comfortable for the most part. And I think especially even before that, on the path of healing, that's even more uncomfortable and even more, in some ways, even painful. It doesn't mean that it's bad, it's really good, but it doesn't feel good. And I think a lot of times and I have seen this a lot, especially if you now look at everybody online showing that, oh, everything is perfect. I started to do this. Now I have all these results and
Right.
everything is great. And now everybody compares their normal life to somebody's highlight reel, and they can easily come to conclusion that, oh, I don't feel good. I don't have all days perfect or aligned or everything gets done perfectly. So it must mean that something is wrong with me, or I'm on the wrong path, or I'm getting off track, or I should pivot into something else. What would be your advice to people who are, in some ways, they actually might feel that, oh, this is something that I do feel aligns with me, but it doesn't feel good. So they now might start to question if that's the right thing for them.
Yeah, so that's about connecting to your higher self. That there's a part of you, sort of like the soul, the spiritual part of you, that is always present, always calm, always peaceful, and gives you a little bit of information that you are doing the right thing, that you're on the right path, even if it feels crappy in that moment. There's this deep inner knowing that this is good for me. This is progressing me as a spiritual being. And so when we can tune into that, then we get this certainty that even though everything is really difficult right now, I'm still on the right path. And the way that we connect with the higher self, there's different ways, but I think the simplest way is to have a little bit of a meditation practice, even if that just means 5 minutes a day. It's that moment of silence with yourself, like you were saying, not by yourself, but with yourself. When you get to know yourself, you get to become friends with yourself, so that when that voice comes of letting you know, I know things are difficult right now, but you are doing the right thing. You know to trust it because you've experienced that little inner knowing through that practice. And then going back to talking a little bit about the chakras, when you are able to balance your chakras, you connect with your higher self, and you're able to know, oh, my hips are hurting. That must mean that my sacral chakra is out of balance. So I need to connect with that. It'll help me to find more joy and fun in my life, be more playful, and therefore I'll be able to be more creative. And just being able to connect with all the different energies that are happening within your body, within your energy body and your physical body, so that you can trust your inner knowing when it comes up. And the inner knowing comes from the third eye, which is the sixth chakra, which the way that we access it is through meditation again.
Can you talk through the chakras or their importance when it comes to, well, really life?
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a physical body and you have an energy body, and your energy body is made up of energy channels. It's the reason why acupuncture works. So from a Western perspective, there's no reason why acupuncture would work, because an acupuncturist puts needles in areas of your body that are not connected to particular muscles or nerves or glands or anything. The needles are going into energy channels. And that's why acupuncture helps us to release pain, to feel calmer, let go of stress. In traditional Chinese medicine, the energy channels are called meridians. In the yoga Indian tradition, those same energy channels are called nadis. It's just different names, same thing. So we have tens of thousands of nadis, of energy channels through the energy body that is completely intertwined with the physical body. Where energy channels intersect, that is an energy center called a chakra. There are 7 main chakras. So we have 3 major nadis, 3 major energy channels around the spine. The Ida and the Pingala, they go like this. They do like a wave pattern. And then the Shushumna, that is a vertical energy channel that crosses the other 2. And where those 3 energy channels intersect at 7 points along your inner core. And those 7 points are the 7 main chakras. So the bottom one is the root chakra. That is the one at the base of the pelvis. That is the chakra of feeling embodied, feeling connected to Mother Earth, having a physical experience as a human being, feeling safe, knowing who your tribe is. That's the root. The sacral is deep in the belly, below the belly button. That is your chakra of fun and creativity and joy. And it has a very playful, childlike sense to it. Above is the solar plexus chakra that is deep in the belly above the belly button. That's like your own little yellow sun. It shines and it's bright and it's about self-confidence and personal power and knowing how to manifest things into your life. And then when we move up, we get to the heart chakra, which is near the physical heart. That is love and compassion, forgiveness, letting go of overwhelm. But like we said before, that always comes from self-love and self-compassion. That's where it begins so that we're able to radiate it out to the world. And then we have the throat chakra, which is about communication and authenticity, being able to speak your truth, capital T, like really being aware of who you are and being able to express that. The third eye is the 6th chakra in the center of your forehead. That is the chakra of intuition and wisdom, inner knowing, that connection to the higher self. And then at the very top of the head is the crown chakra, and that is your connection to the divine, connection to source. And that's where we talked about that curiosity of just being open to understanding how things are working and not passing judgment too quickly.
How to do they go online, offline? How to know that, or how to know that something is off, or when it comes to the chakras specifically?
Yeah, so I think we have an inner knowing that something's off. We know when the energy is not flowing. Because the body and the mind and the spirit are completely connected and intertwined, there's often a physical expression of an out of balance chakra. So, for example, if your lower back is hurting or your hips are tight, that might be the root chakra, that might be the sacral chakra. And what you might want to do is some stretches, or you might go dancing and like do some flowing movements, and that'll help the sacral chakra. If the solar plexus chakra, your center for confidence and personal power, if that is out of balance, it'll actually show up as being kind of dim, like you are hiding your own power and you feel a lack of self-confidence. And a great way to access that chakra from a physical level is by engaging the core muscles. And so any kind of like balance is really good for the solar plexus chakra. And then there's also breathing exercises where you engage the core muscles that can be helpful. For the heart chakra, that shows up as tightness in the chest area, or if you get a tightness between the shoulder blades. That can also mean that the heart chakra is not quite in balance. And so any kind of chest openers and also breathing exercises, breath work, is really good for the heart chakra. When the throat chakra is out of balance, that often shows up as tight neck and shoulders. So needing some stretches there. And then for the upper chakras, the third eye and the crown, well, For the third eye, it's often about chanting the sound The sound is the sound of the third eye. And the crown chakra, it's the reason why the ancient yogis invented headstand. They invented headstand so that
Oh,
you would stand on the top of your head and you would help to balance the crown chakra. So yeah, the chakras go in and out of balance all the time for everybody. So nobody has their chakras in perfect balance 24 hours a day, all the time. And so they bring themselves back into balance, on their own. But I love being aware of how my chakras are showing up, and I love knowing how to bring them back into balance quickly when I notice an imbalance. And I do that with my clients as well.
so does it, based on what you explained, does it mean that it sounds like just in general being active and moving and not just having just one kind of movement, also having stretches and implementing movement within the whole body, that it can not necessarily solve everything, but at least help with like managing that energy better?
Yeah, I think so. I think being able to move and shifting between like active movement and restful movement so that it's not all one thing. We're not constantly elevating the heart rate and constantly working really, really hard. There needs to be calm, quiet movement that is more restful. But yeah, I think it's really helpful to be able to do that because of that connection between the body and the energy.
I could see how yoga comes in here
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, well, yoga was designed to help balance the chakras. And so that
Oh,
doesn't, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So that doesn't mean everybody needs to do yoga, but it is my favorite form of exercise. Um, because like if you've ever done yoga and you've ever done a sun salutation, as you go through the movements of the sun salutation, you're actually accessing each of the chakras and bringing them all
Ah,
back into balance. And so, yeah, it's a very complete practice energetically. But I think it's also important to do these movements or these shapes with awareness, because it's very easy to do them completely mindlessly, maybe
yeah,
listening to
check it
some
off.
music, checking, yeah, exactly, listening to some music, or chatting with a friend as you're doing it, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you're probably not going to balance your chakras if you're not conscious of what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. So going back to the idea of releasing stuck emotions inside your physical body by experimenting with different shapes and different movements, and doing it with awareness, with consciousness, with dedication to, with purpose, and not just haphazardly. I need to check off working out on my to-do list.
I'm I'm curious, what are some of the lessons that you have learned from yoga or doing yoga?
Um, yeah, I have learned that uh, it's it's interesting. I'm going to tell you a little story. So, one of my very first yoga classes, I had an energetic experience. So I was brand new to yoga. I was in college. Um, I didn't know anything, but it was a mixed levels class, and the teacher had us chant the sound at the end of class. So, and I didn't know how to chant, so I just sat there quietly and just listened to everybody else chanting. And instantly, I had this energy experience where I felt like my soul was vibrating inside my physical body. It was this sense of vibration and shaking. And I felt like my body was spinning, and I felt like the whole universe was spinning. It was, it was a scary experience. It changed my life. It was something that I will never forget. I feel like there was before I had that experience, and then after that experience, that I became very aware of how powerful the energy is, and how it can be triggered by sound or by just sitting there, and just the energy was just so alive and spinning and vibrating and shaking. On the outside, it didn't look like anything was happening. It was just this internal experience that I had. I was so weirded out by it that I didn't tell anyone. I kept going to yoga because I enjoyed the physical practice, but I didn't tell anybody about it. Several decades later, after my parents passed away, I met with an energy healer who did a Reiki session with me. And for the first time, I felt comfortable with someone to tell her about that experience I had had back in college. And she was able to explain to me what had happened. She said that hearing the sound which is the sound of the sixth chakra, the third eye, had awakened me to my chakras. And so that was the spinning that I had felt. I had felt my own chakras spinning. And I had felt the energy flowing through my body. And I had felt how it was all connected with the universe as it all spun together. And so for me, it was this relief of finally understanding what had happened, finally understanding about energy and how it works. But at the back of my mind, when I look back, I see that I always knew that there was an energetic element to yoga. Even if I ignored it, even if I pretended it wasn't there by not telling anybody about it, I always knew from day one that the energy was so incredibly powerful, and that yoga and sound and sitting and being in a group could awaken that energy, and that it could be it could be life-changing and extremely powerful. And it's just interesting looking back on a life and seeing the path and, the moments of discomfort. But when I look back, I can see clearly how I feel that I was led to this point where I'm at now, where I can help others connect with that energy and find their own healing that way.
What do you wish more people understood about the energy based on what you have learned and experienced?
That it doesn't have to be scary, that it's available all the time. You can connect to it. Somebody was asking me the other day if I'm always feeling the energy. And I explained to her, it's like listening to your heartbeat. It's always there, but you can ignore it and go about your day. Or you can say, I'm going to stop right now and listen to my heartbeat. And when you do that, you find it immediately and you can connect to it in a really deep way. And that's how I connect with energy, but that's how anybody can connect to their own energy. It's about slowing down, stopping for a moment, and tuning in to the energy within yourself, within your energy body, within your physical body. And once you have a sense of it, then you can come back to it really easily and quickly. And, life goes on. I mean, there's still dishes to be washed and dinner to be made. I mean, it's not that I'm thinking of this all the time. But I love that it's easy to get back to it quickly when necessary. And that is something that is available to everyone. We're all energy beings. We all have this energy identity. And it's so easy in our world to only think of our physical identity, our physical experience, but we all have this higher self. We all have this energy body, that's called the subtle body, and we can connect to it at any moment.
What do you think is getting in people's way to connect with it?
I think fear. I think getting distracted by all the distractions out in the world. It's very tempting to just watch the news and get upset about everything that's going on, rather than say, I'm going to go sit for 10 minutes and clear my mind, or try to clear my mind as much as I can. The distractions that we all deal with are very loud and begging for our attention at all times. But we have a responsibility to ourselves to grow spiritually as energy beings. And so creating this a little practice, whatever that might look like for you, is really healthy, is really helpful. And I really think of it as being a responsibility that you have to yourself. It's good karma to work on your spiritual growth. It means that when you come back in your next life, it'll be one less thing you have to do because you'll have taken care of it in this life. Yeah. So there are distractions. There's lots of distractions, of course, but this being able to tune into self-awareness, self-knowledge, and that will lead to self-love and self-compassion. That is really important.
I have a question on that. Oh, we're too busy for this. We don't have time, even if it's just sitting with yourself for 3 minutes. Because I have gone through that, and it's partly why whenever I have busy season, that's when I start to do the 75 hard program, where you have to do exercise, you have to read, you have to stick to the diet, drink water. Because for me, I know that it's super easy to neglect myself when I have the busy season and I have to focus on work. So I'm looking always for ways how to support that with doing things like 75 hard or other, I don't call them habits, I call them baby steps that I'm taking. But at the same time, I have noticed this within myself and also with other people that I have worked with, where we have this really good intention of doing it. And which is also partly why we have wisdom in action as the title for the podcast, is that we actually know what to do, or we have an idea what we would want to do, even if it's 5-minute meditation. But when it comes to doing it, we always have all these like stories in our minds and reasons why tomorrow seems more like a better time to do it than than today. And I think none of us are really immune to that. All of us have gone through that to some extent, with some things that we want to improve in our lives or some habits we want to build. What would be your advice with starting it? Because I think the one big thing that I have seen is that changing those patterns, because a lot of them are so automatic that it's easier to go back to familiar, even if it's not as good or not as positive energy, where it's pretty much like we know we want to do it, but there's always reasons, there's always stories why right now is not the right time, tomorrow looks better. What would be your advice there?
Yeah. So I certainly have experienced that myself. I think so. There's a couple things to think about. One is, do you have a reason why you're shifting something in your life? So I remember in a yoga class, there was a student who would come to every class every day, was so dedicated to their yoga practice. Well, it turned out that he had had a car accident and he was in a lot of pain, and yoga was the thing that helped him the most. And so he had this reason why he was showing up for yoga all the time, because he needed it, and there was a clear positive for him to do this practice. And so if we have a clear reason why we're trying to make that shift, it can be really helpful. Something that really helped me was making a jump from, I'm trying to do these things, I'm trying to have these activities, to this is who I am. So shifting from these are things I do to this is who I am. So I don't think of myself as somebody who practices meditation. I am somebody who does meditation. That's just my identity.
Yeah.
So shifting the identity to, I am a person who does meditation every day, no matter what. That's who I am. It's not an activity that's on my to-do list. It's not something that I've added. It's, you eat every day. You're somebody who breathes every day. It just becomes part of who you are instead of just something you do.
That's a big one. And another one that I literally started it just from like one guest that I had on a podcast. He mentioned about being 1% better. And I think a lot of times we focus on, let's say with health, I want all these things that I need to get done. Let's focus on what is 1% that I can take today to get closer to my healthier self. Just 1% healthier. And with that, like 1%, I don't know, whatever is your profession, better at that. And you just focus on that instead of, I have to do this and then I have to do this and there's a list of things to do. When it's 1%, and I think it also opens up space for creativity. What could I do today to be like 1% more healthy or higher energy or whatever might be the case? And I'm still experimenting with it, but I do see internally some shifts within that where it's like, instead of you have this list of things to do, it's like, how can I be 1% better within this area? Like one of the things that I'm doing is mobility. So I'm like, okay, 1% better mobility. I have like one program that I'm going through, but it doesn't mean I have to do it every day. I can do something else as well some days. It's not like I'm now stuck within that one thing that I have to do. Some days, based on this conversation alone, I might actually go and do some yoga.
Yeah, what was I going to say? I remember hearing somebody say, any action is better than doing nothing. So
Very true.
It doesn't matter what the action is or how big or small it is. If your choice is, I'm going to do nothing or I'm going to take some action, any action is an improvement. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. Before I ask you the last question, where can people connect with you, learn about you?
Sure. My website is a great place. It's just my name, BrittChemlaJones.com. And then people will find me on Instagram, again, just under my name. And I have a course on balancing your chakras. It's a self-healing course. It's completely self-paced. And it's available on my website or in the bio of my Instagram. And I also do one-on-one energy healing sessions through Zoom.
So it doesn't have to be like one location. It can be from anywhere.
Absolutely. I have Reiki. I use Reiki. Reiki is a type of energy healing that was always designed to work at a distance from the very beginning. And so I've worked with clients all over the world, all over the United States, Canada, Europe, Asia, Australia, and it works really well. It's interesting that we've come to a point in our history where energy healers have been saying for thousands of years that energy healing works beyond time and space. And now we have the technology to prove it, because I can be at my home in the United States and I can send energy to a client of mine who lives in Malaysia, and she will instantly feel it, and she will instantly see colors or feel tingling in her fingertips as we heal her energy. So yeah, that's a beautiful thing. And so, yeah, I do these one-on-one sessions with clients anywhere, and you can find those on my website or in my bio on Instagram.
All right. And last question I have for you is, what is one piece of wisdom you're still learning to live?
That little piece of self-compassion. I just like
relatable.
Yeah, just like everybody else. I find myself slipping into self-judgment and being hard on myself and perfectionism. And I try to let go of that. Somebody told me recently that perfectionism actually stops the expansion of energy. Like the universe just needs to expand, and perfectionism stops it. And that I love that image, and I try to remember that when I try to be perfectionistic. That I'm hindering the energy from flowing, and I just need to let that go and just tune into self-love, self-compassion, and my own creativity.
I love it. Well, Britt, thank you for coming on. It was a really interesting conversation. I'm sure I'm not the only one who learned a lot from from this conversation.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was really fun to talk to you.
And to all of you listening, if you're somebody who has 20+ years of experience and you want to come on, share your wisdom, there'll be details in the show notes as well. And if you want to start your podcast, need help with managing your podcast, or want to get on more podcasts as well, there'll be details below too. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.